And, it's just something that is just a representation of my own personal history of being not only a DJ, but a producer as well, and spending so much time in the culture.
Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is C Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 153 of BierWax, the podcast. This afternoon, we are in glorious Brooklyn, New York. This is our first New York podcast, actually. We are at BierWax with Chris, the principal owner here. So, thank you so much for having us, man.
Pleasure to have you.
Really, really happy to be here finally. We were just talking before. We discovered you guys through our good mates Tio and Benny of Crowns of Hops, formerly Dope and Dank. They did their crawl for their crowdfunding campaign.
Crawl, yep.
Stop here, and if you guys watch or listen, you know that we sort of participated in that with the guys. So it was nice. It's nice to actually be here and the amazing things I had to say about the place.
That's amazing. Shout out to Tio and Benny.
Yeah, man. Shout out to y'all. So yes, thank you for having us, man. So we're gonna start with this little bad boy right here.
Let's do it. Let's crack it open.
Let us know what this one's about. This is a really cool concept.
Yeah, so this is a collaboration brew that we did with Interboro and several other, mostly Dominican-owned bars in New York. And this is the third iteration of a series now of all beers that have the Prez label in some sense.
Right.
And the Prez is not necessarily for our president, but for Presidente, right? The Dominican macro lager that pretty much every Dominican drinks.
Right.
So this was the brainchild of a guy named Joel who works at the Sampler. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I want to brew something that can be really geared towards folks that are not accustomed to craft beer, to try to win them over, that are in our own Dominican community. So we approached Interboro, and they were super down with the idea. So the first one was just called El Prez. The second one was Dead Prez, which was a Vienna lager. And then this is a dry-hopped Pilsner called Not My Prez.
Yes. Made a few folks angry.
It made a few folks angry. There was a lot of hate that Interboro received. And crazy enough, the original post that showed the actual label was blocked on Instagram. You had to press one of those things that says adult content, whatever, or explicit content. So it was like really strange that happened. But
I wonder if they got reported.
That's what happened. Someone reported them probably, and
that is
hilarious. There's a lot of hurt feelings over the name of this beer, and we said that, listen, this is, again, a series, so it's referring to Presidente, so not my Presidente.
Right.
But, take it as you will. If you want
to
have your feelings hurt, that's totally fine. Because I feel, the same way about our president anyways.
Hey, man. It is what it is. And I guess, it's their brewery. If they want to express some political sentiments with their product, so be it,
And they stand by that, so.
Yeah, man, good on them. That's cool. I like that they were down for it.
Sure.
All right, smells great. Cheers, man. Nice nose. Do you know what the hops are?
Oh, damn, I wish I remember. I was there for the tail end of the brewing process.
That's dope. This is great, man. Nice and... when did this drop, by the way?
This officially dropped at the beginning of August.
Okay,
so it's only been a couple of weeks.
Beginning of August, okay.
It's always usually to coincide with Dominican Independence Day.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah,
which is in
August. There's a small parade. It's not as big as the Puerto Rican Day parade.
That's the other one I was thinking. Okay.
So it's a smaller parade, but there's a huge Dominican community in New York City. So
yes.
So there is a parade every year.
Right.
So Interboro. It's usually I'm such a bad Dominican. So it's somewhere in Manhattan.
Somewhere? Oh, yeah, in the city.
Yeah, somewhere in Manhattan.
All right. How did you get into beer, man?
So it's crazy because I got into craft beer in Hong Kong, out of all places.
Wow.
And I was, like other folks that grew up in the States, I was into a lot of macro beer, drinking, Heinekens and whatever I could get my hands on. And I didn't really have a palate, or didn't have even the exposure to craft beer because it wasn't even that popular yet in New York.
Right.
Maybe there were 5 breweries at the time because this is around 2005.
Oh, you're early.
So pretty early on, I went out to Hong Kong. A friend was living out there. He's a big cigar guy, so he took us to a cigar lounge, and he wanted to pair the cigar with this Austrian beer called Semi-Klaus.
Okay.
And it's at the time it was known as the strongest beer in the world, and said that on the label.
Yeah.
It's a Doppelbock, 14, I think 0.5% ABV.
Right.
Back then it was like
that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So So we had one, and it was like a revelation because I'd never had something that was so damn strong in one 12-ounce bottle,
Right.
But also so just delicious. It was very different in terms of the flavor that I've ever experienced when you just drink a lot of macro lagers. So, full-bodied on the sweeter side, very malt forward. And we had another one, and after 2 of those, I was pretty buzzed.
I bet.
And after that, I returned to the States, and I was on a hunt to find a semi-Klaus somewhere in the city, or anything that was different from what I was used to. So, of course, there weren't that many craft beer bars in New York. So, the few that I visited were like, well, we don't have semi-Klaus, but we have this Belgian, triple that you might like, or we have this strong ale that you might like.
Right.
And then I just was like, wow, I was blown away, and that was when my palate started to change, and
Interesting.
and it was like, and I was a DJ way before that. So there was still that mentality of like digging for something, right? Of trying to find something that's like, hidden or in the rough, right? So it was a quest, like, I'm going to go to different bars and find beers that people don't usually find.
Right.
Yeah.
I never thought about that as like a correlation.
Yeah.
DJing and digging for.
So I think part of the,
Right.
with the
whole
marrying
thing, yeah.
of like those two passions of mine, but
That's
I
sick.
think there are definitely similarities of
Yeah.
the two.
I never thought. Is that you realize like you were conscious of that at the time?
Not at the time, no. But
But
a
in
lot of
hindsight?
times when now in hindsight of like realizing like, oh, this is why I'm such a nerd about certain things, right? And that, my nerdom also translates to Star Wars. So
Right.
you'll see some Star Wars figures
Yes, I saw them around.
so but when you get into something, you're passionate about something, and
Yeah.
like you will go out of the way to really, wait on the line or to dig deep for something, get your fingers dusty. So
Right.
yeah.
That's sick, man. So at the time, I guess if you're saying 5 breweries, do you remember what they were even? In
I want to say
2005?
that it was
Like
definitely Brooklyn Brewery, I believe 6 Point.
Okay.
If you want to include Blue Point as one, because they
Before
were
they were
out in
born.
Long Island. But in New York City, I think Kelso was around at the time.
They still. I didn't think I've
They're,
ever heard of them.
they're off and on. I know they went through some trouble, but I believe Kelso was around back then.
Okay.
And the other 2 maybe escaped me. I think Chelsea Brewing Company was still around in Manhattan. But there really weren't that many options.
Right.
A bunch of upstate options.
Okay, that would make sense.
Empire
Much cheaper.
Brewing was around. I think Ithaca was around at the time. So
Okay.
there was still a bunch that were starting in and then of course then you're expanding, trying different things from out of state. So I
Right.
remember Dogfish Head was
Was a big
one of
deal.
my gateway IPA beers.
Right.
So
And was there a lot of beer bars then? Probably.
no, not really.
Not
There was
even
one
there?
particular that I used to go to called Peculiar Pub.
Okay.
And they would hand you a menu that was like listed by region of the world or
Right.
country.
Right.
It was basically like a big binder almost, or like it was pretty heavy and huge. And just to see all the different beers that were across the globe that were predominantly craft beer was pretty amazing. So
That's
that was
sick.
one that was, and of course, Blind Tiger was around.
Oh, they're okay.
I think
yeah,
they're pretty
East
old,
Coast,
yeah.
yes.
So a few others that are not around anymore.
Right.
But
So you've seen essentially been cognizant, sort of aware, and participating in the New York craft beer scene,
Yeah.
and watched it kind of grow over the
Yeah.
last 15 or so years.
yeah, I mean, but especially in the last 7 or 8,
going
it's
crazy,
been
yeah?
incredible. So once the governor changed some laws in terms of making it easier, both for tax purposes and for other specifics that I won't be able to get into as much as some other folks, but it made things so much easier to open up a brewery in New York State.
Right.
So that's when you saw the explosion, not just in New York City, but all across the state of craft breweries opening up.
Right.
So that's when you had the other halves opening up and the Finbacks opening up and Transmitter, LIC, all around the same time. And then from there, it's just the explosion, which is so small for our population
Right.
of breweries. It's maybe approaching 40
Right now?
Right now,
Okay. In all 5 boroughs.
in all 5 boroughs, with the exception of just, I believe, 1 or 2 in Manhattan.
Right.
One is in I believe, a Greek restaurant.
okay.
Very small
Like
facility.
nano type of situation.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a brew pub, probably 3 barrels in terms of their
Right.
system. But and Torch and Crown is supposed to be opening up in Manhattan.
Okay. That's such a strange place to open a brewery to.
It's
It's
just-
like it's going to be some of the most expensive real estate in the
Exactly,
world.
and that's the problem, and
Right.
and that's the problem with New York City in general, even Brooklyn,
Right.
even Queens. You're talking about, tens to $20,000 a month on rent alone. So
That's pretty crazy.
So you have to guarantee that you are, packing the tap room and you have some kind of cult following. So
it's a lot of stress, eh?
Yeah.
Just seems like definitely a tough. I mean, that's probably explains the lack of brewery for the population. What is the population like?
Oh God, I
And that's sick.
probably 12 million.
Yeah.
This is pulled out of my ass.
Yeah. I was in my head. That's probably wrong. I always thought Manhattan alone was like 20 million. But that's not even possible, is it? Maybe it's 20 for the whole.
I mean, of course we can ask Siri, but
Yeah. That's who has time for that?
Exactly.
Okay, so that explains that. So
8 million in New York City.
that's
8 million,
Okay, I
okay.
thought 20. So New York City, does that mean all the boroughs, or that means the island?
It's 20 million in the entire state.
Maybe
in the
that's
entire
what I
state.
heard.
Okay.
Okay, so I had
but
that in mind.
8 million in New York City.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all 5 boroughs.
In all 5 bars.
Okay, that makes much more sense.
Yeah.
But still, 840 brewery for 8 million people.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty. It's pretty low.
Yeah.
But-
It's definitely room for a lot more.
Okay.
Especially when you go to other cities, you visit, Portland, or you visit Asheville, go to San Diego. Like,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. You can go to a strip mall and there's like 3 breweries when you're going to try to buy socks. So
Which is kind of crazy. Though, to be fair, like I feel like there's craft beer almost everywhere here. Like I dare you to find a bar that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
At least 2-3 options.
yes and no, because then you may have a bar that has a few options, but it's going to be Founders All Day IPA, and that's a great beer. It's a solid beer, but then you'll have your symbolic few,
Right.
just
Which
to
is-
say,
Better than I guess. I agree.
yeah,
I feel like it's still better than just having AB options.
it's true. Yeah,
So it's not so bad. Like
Yeah.
that's something that the States has over Canada,
Okay.
or even like Australia, whereas like it's every single place would have something. It'd be
Okay.
very, very rare to just have the AB options. So it's not so bad. Like clearly, people like us would rather
Yeah.
this type of menu everywhere. But I mean, like it's definitely advanced. One of the most advanced sort of what's the word? Like the craft beer sort of. Integrated into society a little more. The average person is more knowledgeable
Yeah.
or drinks craft beer versus would just have a macro lager or something.
I would
Generally
hope
speaking.
so. I would hope so.
Yeah.
But then when I sometimes do some traveling, and then I'll go to a random bar, and I'll notice everyone's drinking Bud Light,
Right.
and then I'm like, and still it's a small percentage of the overall beer sales in comparison to macro beer.
It's like 12, I think.
I
last
think,
I
and it's growing, of course. But overall, the beer sales in the United States is slowing
dropping,
down.
right? Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
Hence
so-
the hard seltzers like everywhere
Yeah,
now, which
and I
is
know,
crazy.
which is crazy because they're still considered craft beer or considered beer product.
Like malt-based product.
Yeah, so
that's why breweries can make them, I think.
they make them,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
considered as part of their sales volume.
Right.
So I know Boston Beer Company is decreasing. I think they have
What's it
White
called?
Claw, maybe.
Is that them?
I don't know if it's them because they have so
They have
many.
Angry Orchard or
They have also, I believe they have Angry. They have a whole bunch. Their portfolio is
Twisted Tea or
huge.
something?
Yes,
That's the one.
but those things are outselling beer right
Beers,
now.
yeah, that's why
which
they
is
partnered with
amazing.
Dogfish because Dogfish are not. They didn't bother to go where they still make the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a bit more old school, but they're still like fun styles and crazier stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Than perhaps they would. I didn't realize that was like that. The seltzer was.
Yeah, it's really,
part of it.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's why it's great for them to be able to show that they're actually still growing in terms of sales.
Right.
But it's not necessarily
Not
just
for
beer.
beer.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of people come in here for?
You know what? Yesterday I was considering like, oh, maybe we need to carry some more of that hard seltzer because it's
Just in case?
so popular right
Yeah.
now. And we had Miami Brewing Company makes a version,
Right.
and it did pretty well for us. But I think if we had other versions, but again, I only carry products here that are made by independent breweries or independent companies in general.
Right.
So I would have to do some research on the
Which
ownership.
ones?
Yeah.
Right. I was going to jump in ahead then. So then, okay, you got into beer in 2005. You started exploring it more.
Yeah.
How did BierWax come about?
Yeah. So there was a certain point. I was an educator. I was a high school teacher
Right.
for 7 years, and I went more into administrative work within the Department of Education, within education in New York City. But then at a certain point, I was like, I had this itch of being an entrepreneur. I went to grad school for socially responsible business. I was supposed to open a nonprofit, but I still had that seed planted of entrepreneurship.
Right.
And I was like sitting one day thinking how dope it would be to really combine the two things that I'm most passionate about. Both, hip hop, vinyl records, DJ culture in general, and craft beer.
Right.
So I didn't know what that was going to look like. I don't know if it was going to be like a bottle shop that was also a record shop. I was really unsure, and it took me a few years to really solidify the idea.
Right.
But then, and during that time, I knew if I wanted to start something, I need to have some experience in the industry.
Right.
So the first thing I did was get my sister on level 1.
Nice.
To at least have some things. I had no other experience. I just had a teaching experience. So, but luckily I was hired by a brewery to do be on the sales end of things out in Long Island called Greenport Harbor.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yeah.
So
okay.
I just going around. I was their brand ambassador and going around to different
like pouring at events.
pouring
and
and doing tastings and so
Samplings,
forth.
yeah,
So,
yeah, sick.
So that was my start. I always give them a lot of props. I just came back from a quick little mini vacation out there.
Nice.
And then I worked at Finback out
yeah?
in Queens. Yeah, so I was a bartender and eventually became the tasting room manager.
No way.
Which was just instrumental in terms of like having the experience of running a bar.
Right.
So I did that for a couple of years, and my full-time job, I was a director of an adolescent pregnancy prevention program out here in downtown Brooklyn, working for 5 years in middle school and high school. But we lost funding, so I knew that I was going to be out of a job eventually. And I got a severance package, and that was really the kick in the butt to like, now is the time.
Right.
So, and eventually, I was writing about beer. I was really doing as much as I could to throw myself into the culture, meeting a lot of people. When I worked at Finback, I just met a lot of people in the New York City scene.
I bet, right.
And then when I was, really gung-ho about opening up a space, I just spread that gospel of BierWax, like I am doing this and there's no stopping me.
Nice.
And it's been a tough road. It's not easy to open up a business in New York City.
No, I bet. Particularly in alcohol with permits on
Yeah.
top of all the other nonsense you have to
Exactly.
deal with. Yeah.
But I think my wife would have divorced me if it didn't happen. There were other failed ideas and projects.
Right.
So she was really a huge support to be like, listen, I'm sacrificing, the family's sacrificing a lot to make sure that you're getting this dream off the ground. So I hope that you actually make this happen.
Right.
So
it's a bit of pressure.
yeah, a little bit of pressure.
So then we were talking earlier, so you found the space at the end of 2017?
Yeah. So, and we were looking for almost a whole year
Oh, yeah?
for real estate.
Right.
Because it's like, if you imagine looking for an apartment in New York City and how cutthroat that is. You go to Craigslist or go to a realtor and you're looking at apartments and then, oh, sorry, someone signed the lease already. So it's similar. You meet different brokers that you go and look at spots, and some look great and then others you realize doesn't have a certificate of occupancy designated for alcohol and restaurants. And they won't tell you that. They'll just say like, oh no, this is a great space. This would be great for your bar. Until you dig a little bit deeper and realize like, oh, it'll probably take me a whole year just to get the Department of Buildings to change over the C of O.
Right.
So we had to be very careful, with locations in New York City, how much rent you're going to have to pay. And so we were locked into a whole negotiation for a space right down the block from Roberta's Pizza on Moore Street in Bushwick.
Right.
And we were super excited about the space. It was a great location. We really liked Bushwick. My wife was born and raised in Bushwick. We lived in Bushwick together, so there was a lot of history in that neighborhood for us.
Right.
My mother-in-law and father-in-law still live in Bushwick, so we're there quite frequently. So we were excited, but things just were in a stalemate with the space over that same issue, the certificate of occupancy. And noise was another big thing.
Right. They didn't want to buy.
They knew that our focus was music and DJs and so forth. So they put a clause in the lease that stated that if we went over a certain number of decibel levels and we didn't cure, that we can be evicted.
Wow. Like
So-
not even just a fine, like actually.
There was a fine, but then if we did it again, we could be evicted the second time. So, and the crazy thing is that there was nothing above us. Just on the side of us, there were businesses like shared office spaces. Most times, I imagine those people will be gone by the time we have DJs. But
Right.
But I do know some people work way past 9:00 these days.
Yeah, it's a little nuts, okay.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that seems a little ridiculous. Do you think it was like they just didn't want? Because I've heard this before. They just don't want a type of business in there.
We were deep into negotiations with lawyers involved, with
right.
architects there, so they were ready to sign the lease. But it was still, we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. So during that waiting game, I was just had my eyes open for other spaces, and we found this space in a whole different part of Brooklyn. But when I went to the backyard, when I saw there was a backyard
like,
and saw how beautiful, and at the time there were grapes growing.
Growing from that?
So we have grapes right now in the back
That's-
that are going to be harvested in about 2 weeks. I think this is it. I was like, it just felt so right. When your gut knows, your gut knows. And
Hell yeah.
And I went after it very aggressively. The broker, I was like, I need the space. We want the space. Let me meet the landlords. And we met the landlords and had an interview with them. They wanted to make sure that, we had a viable business model, and the rest was history.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that was end of, I think you said October-ish or
This
something?
was, so we signed the lease at the end of August, and then it took us about 3 months to get everything together, to wait for a liquor license to do our renovations, and then we had a soft opening on December 13th of 2017.
Damn.
So it'll be almost 2 years coming up.
Oh, nice. Are you going to party?
We'll always have an annual party.
Yeah, you got to do it up.
We got to do it up.
Yeah? You got any collab brews or something planned?
Yeah.
Special, yeah?
Yeah, definitely have some things up our sleeve.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Anything you want to drop?
Well,
Nah, it's probably still late. It's only August.
it's not a collab brew, but we have we're very excited about Great Notions are out of
from Portland.
from Portland.
Yeah.
They're going to be coming and doing a tap takeover.
That's sick.
So that's coming up pretty soon in September. We're looking to do. We had a few other ideas of collaborations with local breweries. We always are down to collaborate with Interboro, but we have a few other things that we've been working on.
Very cool,
I don't want to say anything until.
No, of course. I'm being cheeky.
Yeah.
So it's been a couple years, and so basically, like I was saying earlier, we know of you guys through Tio and Benny, and I guess the way that they sort of like positioned you guys and the way they really like loved their experience here, and their mission is for culturally authentic spaces. I mean, there's a lot of breweries that are just slapping wrappers on beer labels and stuff, and there's no one of color working there, or no one in the hip hop culture that really understands it, that is taking something and making money off it. So this space represents that. I mean, that's accurate. That's sort of what you were actively trying to create here, as far as like a space that represents hip hop. Being you were a DJ and like you clearly care from the hip hop culture. Yeah. Coming up in New York, where it was born anyway. I mean, that was sort of part of the mission from the start, was to create a space that represented that. Is that?
I think a good story or example is when folks first saw the idea of what was going to be opening up here in Brooklyn, and they realized that, it's going to be craft beer and vinyl. The first word that was thrown out is, it's going to be a hipster bar.
Oh, right.
And then other times people walk in.
Fair, sort of like that's what Brooklyn's kind of become
Exactly.
lately.
If you think about Bushwick and Williamsburg, and a lot of folks that are new to New York City, those two things represent that, right? People walk by and they'll look in and they'll see the records, not know who the owner and the owners are in general. The majority, I'm the principal owner, but all the other, minority partners that have smaller bits of equity are almost all people of color from New York City.
Right.
So the assumption is, this is a hipster thing, not knowing that I was born and raised in New York City with hip hop in my blood. It's one of my things that I spend a lot of time wasting time thinking about who's my top 5 MCs, the kind of thing.
We're gonna have to get to that.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
And it's just something that is just a representation of my own personal history of being not only a DJ but a producer as well, and spending so much time in the culture, and meeting a lot of people that are MCs and DJs, and having so much respect for people that are much better DJs than I am, but wanting to create a space that provided a platform for a culture that I hold very dear.
Right.
Within another culture that I hold dear, which is craft beer.
Right.
And uniting the two. So, but I think naturally it became something that folks that are not necessarily into craft beer will come because they have it's a DJ that they follow or that they love, and we just open our arms to everyone and especially embrace a crowd that is diverse and is not necessarily used to coming to a craft beer space.
Right.
When it's if you go to, and me personally as a man of color, of going to craft beer bars or going to breweries and being like the only person of color, sometimes was unnerving.
Right.
So that's definitely something that we've thought about, of how do we try to be a space that is really welcoming to all.
I think we captured everything pretty well.
Cool.
Matt, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Where can everyone find BierWax online, whether social or website?
Yeah, great. So our website is just BierWax, BIERWAX.com. Social media on all platforms. Instagram is where we really update the most. So that's just BIERWAX. It's also Twitter. It's also Facebook. But we spend a lot more time on Instagram than we do on the other platforms.
So definitely follow on Instagram. Also, keynote there, you have the one of our things we do in our social media stuff, the consistent handles. Use like BierWax everywhere.
Yeah.
Easy. You're not like beer_wax BK or somewhere else. Like none of that nonsense.
No. It's just BierWax.
know what you're doing.
BAOS. Yep.
Love it.
Yep.
My man,
So-
thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Of
course.
So guys, if you're ever in Brooklyn, make sure you come down here, Prospect Heights. What's the address?
Address is 556 Vanderbilt Avenue. That's between Bergen and Dean in Prospect Heights.
And like 2 or 3 blocks from the Barclays
Barclays
Center. So if
Center,
you
yeah.
go see a show, you know where you need to go afterwards. It's a really good location.
Oh, man, it's been
Perfect,
amazing.
right?
It's been
Yeah.
great.
Perfect. So, guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, mate, smash the thumbs up. Hit subscribe below. Hit the notification bell so you know when the new stuff drops. Follow us on social media at BAOS Podcast. And check out the long form audio so you can hear legends like Uncle Chris talk about craft beer in New York. That is it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next episode. Cheers.
Peace.